Our weed of the week is Heath Aster.
Now, Heath Aster is a perennial weed, but fortunately, it's a simple perennial. And here's one of those things where knowing the life cycle of plants is just really critical. When you think about perennial weeds, sometimes you have perennials that also have rhizomes. Well, then if you do tillage, you chop up those rhizomes that are running below the ground, and the plant can all of a sudden turn into 100 plants because all those chunks of rhizomes that are below the ground are going to shoot a runner up trying to survive. Well, if you've got a simple perennial, it doesn't reproduce like that through the root system. It's going to reproduce by seed alone. So if you've got a weed like Heath Aster, if you can mow it off before it can go to seed, well, all of a sudden you've got a method that can control the plant for a little while anyway. Now, you don't want to have to keep mowing it forever. Eventually you got to do something about it, but maybe that option could be tillage for you. And you say, hey, I'm going to do tillage in the fall. I can just mow it off for now, not let it go to seed, and then I'll do some tillage, I'll rip it up, and I won't have Heath Aster again.
All right, now hold up, Darren. You said eventually you might have to do something else. I don't think you do. If you were to go out and mow every single week so it never goes to seed, if you've got a plant that only reproduces by seed, well, you're in good shape. All right, but let's face it, a lot of people aren't going to be mowing every week, and the weed can go to seed at some point. So you got to take a look at other control methods. Where we will most commonly see this is pastures, ditches, other non-crop areas, and just like most other broadleaf weeds, you're going to get some decent activity out of 2,4-D or dicamba, especially if you're using stronger rates. Now certainly you could throw some Tordon in there. There are some other products you could use as well, but I like to try to keep my choices simple. So it's 2,4-D, it's dicamba, it's Tordon. Just use a good strong rate, because remember, this is a perennial weed. So you want to try to have not just good burn down on top, but you want to get into that root system, because the root system, since it's a perennial, is usually quite strong.
Here's the challenge with that, Brian, is Heath Aster, a lot of times we'll see it out into tree groves. So if you're in a wooded area, you've got to be real careful with what you do, and you also have to be careful about the timing. So for one, you can't use Tordon, and you probably can't use Milestone either, because that's going to negatively impact the trees. So maybe you say, okay, I can use 2,4-D. That's one that I can use. All right, that's fine. You can use it either in the late fall or very early spring, and be very careful about the weather, because you don't want to have days where volatility could be an issue that could move that up into the foliage of the trees.
Well, I'm not too worried about the volatility if we have no foliage. So that's the reason why Darren says late fall or early spring. If you can do it when there are no leaves on the trees, then usually you're pretty safe with that. Now, when we get out into crop fields, that's where Roundup is going to be the best on this perennial, just like most perennials. The big key is avoid tillage, get the Roundup sprayed first, make sure you're spraying on a nice warm day, and use a good strong rate of Roundup.
Well, if you're in a no tillage situation, Roundup is the best bet. Now, if you're not using Roundup, you certainly could do tillage, since this is a simple perennial. Well, that's all the time we have for this week's Weed of the Week, but Iron Talk is coming up next.